You know, for more than 100 years, the way we think about work, our whole 9 to 5 culture, it's all been built on one simple, powerful idea. An idea that literally set the rhythm for modern life.
And that idea comes from this quote from way back in 1817. 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. And this wasn't just some catchy slogan from a guy named Robert Owen. No, it was a radical demand for a better, more balanced way to live.
And for a long time, it was a fantastic idea. It worked. But here's the thing. The world that it was built for, it doesn't exist anymore. And for the kind of work that you and I do today, knowledge work, that 8-hour structure isn't just a little outdated. It's actually making us worse at our jobs. So let's get into why.
To really get why this system is so broken for us now, we have to go back in time. We need to understand where the 8-hour day even came from. See, it was a hard-won solution to a really specific and frankly, a pretty brutal problem.
Just picture the factory floor during the Industrial Revolution. This was a world of pure physical grind. We're talking 12, 14, even 16-hour workdays in factories that were dangerous, loud, and just plain miserable. And this wasn't just for adults. Kids were right there in the thick of it. The single biggest enemy back then was simple: physical exhaustion.
Now, changing this didn't happen overnight. No way. The fight to tame that factory clock was a long, hard slog that took decades. It started with slogans like Owen's and slowly moved through laws and acts and union battles. And here's the key takeaway. The entire system was designed to protect our bodies from being overworked to the point of break.
Okay, so fast forward to today. For most of us, the factory floor looks a whole lot different. The heavy machinery isn't out there in a loud building anymore. It's right up here, between our ears.
See, the game has completely changed. We're not battling physical fatigue anymore. We're battling mental exhaustion. We're not hauling steel. We're managing complex projects. We're coding. We're strategizing. The challenge isn't about managing our time anymore. It's about managing our attention. And our modern workplace is basically a war zone for that attention.
You know that feeling, right? When you get pulled away from something and then try to go back, but your brain just feels fuzzy, like you're operating at 70%? Well, there's a name for that. It's called attention residue. It's this cognitive fog that lingers after you switch tasks. So even when you're working on task B, part of your brain is literally still stuck on task A.
So how often does this happen? Get ready for this. Research shows that the average professional gets somewhere between just 6 and 12 minutes of focused work done before, bam, an email, a Slack message, a tap on the shoulder. Think about that. You barely have time to get into a state of deep focus before your concentration is just shattered, leaving that damaging attention residue behind.
So, interruptions are a huge villain in this story. But they're not the only one. There's another, sneakier problem. We have a fundamental misunderstanding of how our brains actually learn and create value. We're trapped in what you could call an illusion of productivity.
All right, let's try a little test right now. And be honest, don't look it up. Can you draw the Starbucks logo? I mean the whole thing. The siren, the text, the stars, all of it. Just picture it in your head. Got it?
So how'd you do? If you struggled, you are not alone. Not even close. Get this. Even though we see that logo constantly, studies showed that fewer than 6% of people can actually draw it accurately from memory. And that right there tells us something huge. Seeing isn't the same as learning.
And that little logo test perfectly shows the huge difference between two ways of learning. On one side, you have passive learning. That's just recognizing something, like the logo. It feels super easy, it feels like you're being productive, but it's totally shallow. It creates this illusion of knowing. On the other side, you have active learning, or recall. That's the hard work of forcing your brain to pull information out of itself. It feels difficult, it feels slow, but it's the only way to build knowledge that actually sticks.
Okay, so if interruptions are so bad and passive learning doesn't really work, why on earth do we spend our days like this? Why are we stuck in this cycle of distraction and shallow work? Well, it turns out it's because of a really powerful glitch in how we think.
It's a little thing called survivorship bias, and it basically means we are wired to focus on the winners, the success stories, the things that survived, and in doing so, we completely ignore all the failures, which leads us to some seriously wrong conclusions.
The classic story to explain this comes from World War II. The military wanted to armor their bombers better, so they looked at the planes that made it back from missions and mapped out where all the bullet holes were. The wings and the tail were all shot up. So the obvious answer was, reinforce the wings and the tail. But a statistician named Abraham Wald pointed out the massive flaw. They were only looking at the survivors.
The real, crucial data was with the planes that didn't come back. The reason the engines on the returning planes were pristine, because planes that got hit in the engine never made it home. The genius insight was to armor the places with no bullet holes.
And we do the exact same thing at work. We look at successful people and copy their surface-level habits, the parts we can see, while completely missing the deep, invisible work that actually led to their success. We're reinforcing the visible bullet holes. But here's the good news. Once you can name these problems, attention residue, the illusion of knowing, survivorship bias, you can start fighting back. And it's actually not that complicated.
First up, to fight that nasty attention residue, try the Ready to Resume plan. It's so simple. Before you let yourself get interrupted or switch tasks, just take 1 minute. That's it. Write down exactly where you are, and, this is the most important part, write down the very next tiny step you'll take when you come back. This simple act basically offloads the task from your brain. It tells your mind, hey, we're good. I've got a plan to pick this up later, freeing you up to focus completely on the new thing.
And you might be thinking, does the little 1-minute plan really make a difference? Oh yeah. A study found that people who did this were a whopping 79% more likely to make the best possible decision on the interrupting task. Why? Because their full brain power was available. It wasn't still stuck on the last thing they were doing.
And what about that illusion of knowing? Well, the fix is simple, but it's not always easy. You have to get active. Stop just rereading your notes. Instead, close the book and force yourself to recall the key ideas. Quiz yourself with flashcards. Try explaining a complex idea out loud to an empty room or even your dog. You have to wrestle with the material. It's like the mathematician Paul Holmo said, don't just read it, fight it. That fight, that's where real learning happens.
So let's bring it all back. The 8-hour workday, it feels like a law of the universe, doesn't it? But it's not. It was an invention. It was a piece of technology designed to solve the problems of a very different time. And our time demands a new invention.
When you think about it, the first great labor revolution was a fight to win back our time, to have a life outside the factory. The next revolution, the one we're in right now, is a fight to win back our focus, to create space for deep thought in a world that wants to distract us every second of the day.
So here's the big idea to leave you with. Your mind, that's your new factory floor. And trying to run it on an 8-hour shift filled with constant interruptions and shallow work, well, it just isn't going to cut it anymore. So the real question for you is, how are you going to upgrade your machinery?